Welcome to the Focolare Word of Life podcast for January 2024. My name is Nick Cianforani and I'll be your host. In today's episode, we'll be listening to 3 experiences that relate to this month's Word of Life, which says, "Love the Lord your God and your neighbor as yourself." Taken from Luke chapter 10, verse 27. The first experience that we'll be listening to is by Roberto Jervis from Naples, Florida, who shares how he recognized Jesus in a homeless man and invited him to eat with him. The second experience is by Gloria Avent, who shares how she made a special effort and reached out to someone she needed to be reconciled with. And in the final experience, Yolla Kadissi from Dallas shares how after a misunderstanding with her neighbor, she worked hard to reestablish a good relationship with them. I'd like to begin by reading a short reflection prepared by Tom Rowley on this month's Word of Life. This month, the Word calls us to look at neighbor a little differently. It calls us to see ourselves as neighbor to those we encounter each day. The question that we could ask is, do we follow those in need like the priest and the Levite did in the story of the Good Samaritan? In seeing the beaten man, they perhaps said a prayer for or wished him well. Or do we become the neighbor for those we meet, as did the Samaritan who accompanied that man who was in need? The choice in how we respond to our neighbor is always ours. But to love as we would want to be loved, that choice is clear. Welcome, Roberto. It's a great joy having you on our podcast today. Can you tell us something about yourself?
Sure. My name is Roberto. I've had the pleasure of living in Florida for 23 years in Naples. I am married. I have 4 children. We came from Ecuador, from Quito.
Thank you for sharing that, Roberto. And now we're all ears to listen to your experience.
Okay. Well, one day I went to Miami to help my brother with his daily tasks. At the end of the day, when we were getting ready to head back home, we stopped by a place where they sell all kinds of delicious empanadas. After waiting in a long line, I got some empanadas, not only to eat there, but also to take home. When we stepped outside, they had some tables nicely arranged where we could eat and talk, and a waitress was tidying up the area. My brother told me to have a seat and wait for him while he went next door to get something that he had forgotten. As I was about to start eating, I saw a man with long hair and a beard standing on the street at the edge of the restaurant area. He was wide-eyed, and it looked to me like he had not eaten for a while. At first, I was reluctant to invite him to my table because only customers were allowed in that area. Nevertheless, I invited him to have a seat right in front of me at my table. He came and sat down in a shy way. He did not speak a word. I gave him the best I had from my empanadas and a juice to drink. He started eating quietly and eagerly. He was my guest. While he was staring at me in awe, I had the chance to say in my heart, "For you, Jesus." The waitress came over and said that he was not allowed to be inside the restaurant area. I told her that he was my guest, and so she turned away and left. We sat there until he finished. There was such a joy in my heart as we both connected in this brief and precious moment. So that's my experience.
The love of neighbor really stands out in your experience, Roberto. So thanks so much for sharing it with us. Gloria, it is a great joy to have you on our podcast and especially to reconnect with you after so many years that we've known each other. We go back to the 80s, really. And so it's a great joy to have you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Now, Gloria, before you share your experience, I'd love for you to share a little bit about yourself. So could you do that for us?
Yes, I'm retired and I am the mother of three, wife of a retired minister, and I have two beautiful grandsons. I live in Charleston, South Carolina. You might be able to tell that.
Beautiful, beautiful. So the mic is yours. Go ahead.
Well, thank you. You know, for the last several years, I've made a practice of trying to understand before the beginning of a new year what theme or word might be, particularly for me. In December, started to think about this, and I was meeting with a friend for the express purpose of praying together. And in the process of that, I began to talk with her about an unpleasant experience that I had had several months before that was really bothering me. It had to do with the principle of not taking offense with another and the importance of learning to let go of offense that we might have taken from another person. I really felt in that moment that my conscience was speaking to me. And for me, my conscience is really the voice of God's presence within me. In understanding that, I knew that I had to do something to repair this breach that had taken place between me and another person. And this was someone who was providing a service to me that I really didn't know well, but there was just a tremendous misunderstanding, difficulty in communication between us that caused me to have a breach in my trust of this person. When I was asked to make a review of my interaction, I gave this person a very unflattering review. And this is not something I was in the habit of doing. So after I did that, I felt even worse. It didn't help the situation, it only made it worse. And so I began to pray and ask God to help me to go to this person and ask for forgiveness. Shortly thereafter, I had a need and I knew that this was the opportunity. I just had a sense within that this was the answer to my prayer. So I made the appointment, I went, and it was just such a beautiful moment to see the relief on this person's face. At first, when I arrived there, there was like, all the blood ran out of this person's face. In the right moment, I was able to say, I believe that there's been a misunderstanding, and I just would like to ask you if you would be willing to forgive me. And it was just an amazing change in this person's demeanor and a beautiful, beautiful moment between us. I've just thought so much about this experience. It's had such a huge impact on me. The thing that I'm beginning to discover, because I'm not off of this journey, is that not only is there joy in being able to obey what I know is right to do, but there's a joy that goes beyond that, that is community. I can have community with the other person who is the presence of God to me, not only a part of me, but also this is God's image to me. God created me, He loves me. If I can see His image in this person, I can be free of fear and anxiety and just reap the joy. So that has been a tremendous step of growth for me. And I'm hoping to end well. I'm hoping my life will be well lived as I continue to stay youthful in terms of growing.
I couldn't help but think of the word of life,
Yeah.
to love God and to love your neighbor as yourself. What better way of loving our neighbor than to have that reconciliation and to have that oneness with our neighbor? Thank you, Gloria. It was such a joy having you on our podcast, and especially thank you for sharing your beautiful experience with us.
It's just a great, great joy to be able to talk with you today and share this beautiful moment that gift I was given.
It truly was. Thanks again, Gloria.
You bet.
Welcome, Yolla. It's a great pleasure to have you on our podcast today.
Oh my gosh, thank you, Nick. I'm so happy to be on this podcast.
Before you share your experience, can you tell our listeners something about yourself?
My husband and I, along with our 4 girls, our dog, and our cat, recently moved to Dallas from Oklahoma. And we are originally from Lebanon. And now in Dallas, I work as a teacher assistant with special need kids.
Beautiful. I'm sure that's a very fulfilling job, because to be able to give your attention and love to these children, I'm sure it's very beautiful.
Yes, it is.
Well, we are very eager to listen to your experience now, so go ahead. The microphone is yours.
Okay, thank you. When we first arrived in Dallas, our cat ran away. I was certain that she would eventually make her way back home. That evening, we heard her meowing. I took my flashlight and went outside to look for her. I spot her on our neighbor's roof and began to wave with the flashlight at Simba, our cat, so she could see me and hear my voice. I hadn't realized how close our neighbor's house was. Suddenly, I heard the voice of an elderly woman yelling at me. She began telling me that she was going to call the police because I was trespassing and that I really frightened her. I told her that I was very sorry and that I didn't realize my light was going into her room. A few minutes later, she came over to our house, knocking on our door and complaining about the whole situation. I again told her how sorry I was and that all we were doing was looking for the cat. I tried to be as friendly and as calm as I could while explaining this to her. She told me that she's allergic to cats and that I should keep my cat away from her house. I explained to her that my cat is an indoor one and that I would do everything I could to make sure the cat would not go near her house. I was so upset and sad because I didn't want the relationship with our new neighbors to start off in such a bad way. Since then, every time I found her and her husband outside, I always found an excuse to talk to them or ask them about what was happening in the neighborhood, just to keep the relationship alive. During Thanksgiving, our girls and I baked some banana bread, and we shared it with them. They were very surprised when they saw us standing on their doorstep, greeting them and asking them about their kids and their grandkids. I had noticed that one of their grandchildren would sometimes come into our yard and play on a swing that we have, and I told them that he is welcome to enjoy the swing anytime, even if we are not at home. They went on to explain why they are so scared and cautious. Last summer, they had an incident where their windows were broken, and since then, they feel very insecure. It was a very beautiful moment chatting together. The following week, my neighbor wanted me to see the indoor toy set she was setting up for her grandchild. At Christmas time, when we put up our Christmas decorations, I included 2 big inflatable balloons on the side of the yard closer to their house so that their grandchildren could play with them. Her husband also offered to cut down a dead tree in our front yard, and since both my husband and I have very busy work schedules, this was a great help for us. We are really grateful that we learned long ago how to love our neighbors, literally.
Thank you, Yolla, for sharing your lovely experience with us. And thank you for being on our podcast.
Oh, thank you. It was my pleasure to be part of this podcast. It's amazing.
So thank you for joining us today. I hope you have been inspired by the wonderful stories shared, and I look forward to being with you again next month. To listen to a reflection and commentary on the Word of Life, just go to the previous episode of this podcast. I invite you to join me each month for new episodes. You can also read additional experiences in Living City magazine. Please consider making a donation to Focolare Media so that we can continue producing inspiring podcasts. Visit give.focolare.us. Thank you in advance for your support. Bye for now, and God bless.
The Word of Life is translated into approximately 90 different languages and dialects, reaching millions worldwide through print, radio, TV, and other media. There are special versions for children and teens as well, which you can find at livingcitymagazine.com. This podcast has been brought to you by Focolare Media.